Hi students, so this week we are going to look at international relations regarding development and resources that are available to people within one country compared to the next. We're going to look at a documentary about, it's called The Why is the name of the YouTube channel, and we're going to look at a documentary about poverty and about how international corporations can contribute to low human development index issues within low levels of human development within certain countries and really have a lot of economic and social uplift in other countries based on that gross national product that we talked about in a previous week. Okay, so before we do that, we're going to look at some development theories because industrialization and development is still regarded as one of the key factors in improving human development issues worldwide, even though only measuring things like gross domestic product, gross national product, or gross national income doesn't really give us the experience of the boots on the ground of the people who live there. But we need to look at the ways in which politics and government on the macro scale can affect whether human development index issues can be improved for the people within a population there. So there are a couple of three in particular, different theories we're going to look at briefly in this video. One of them is dependency theory. This is the idea that some nations of the world must be pulled along and follow the guidance or even the manipulation of other more economically powerful, more industrialized nations in order to get any kind of economic uplift for the nation as a whole or the people within it. So dependency theory, it's about economic and political relations among the different governments. Now, some governments have a high degree of corruption. I don't think that that will be such a newsflash for a lot of you. And as a matter of fact, some governments have sort of what's called a clan mentality, that only the people who are in the elite or ruling class are the ones who should, see my air quotes there, should benefit from these things. And so we'll see a little bit of that in the documentary that you're going to watch. So this political and economic relationship, some people who use dependency theory say that this holds the key to development of a nation. So if it's an underdeveloped nation, then developed nations usually prey upon the resources of them, and the only income that the developing or underdeveloped nations might have on the macro scale comes from those more powerful, economically developed nations. Dependency theory in a nutshell. Modernization theory, on the other hand, is more of like an evolution of one condition to the next on the pathway toward development and industrialization. So it really has a 5-stage process. It's about modernization, as the title describes, but this is the idea that every nation on the earth started out at the same place, that traditional agrarian or that really basic horticultural kind of no surplus oriented agricultural situation, like we talked about earlier on in the semester, that everybody starts out there. They call it Walt Rostow is the name of the guy who developed this. He calls it the traditional stage. This is the agrarian, no profit kind of subsistence level agriculture. And that there has to be some precursor to change. We have to start changing that mentality, changing toward that profit surplus oriented model. And that's when economic development can take off. So we have the preconditions to take off. We have traditionals, number one, preconditions to take off, which is like a change in mindset, a change in subsistence strategy, and then we can really take off in the third step toward modernization, toward development and industry. And then the fourth phase of this modernization theory is that once you're in the takeoff stage, you can really start to solidify your position with high production within the nation itself. So if we have high production, lots of goods and services that are available, and we solidify that fourth step step in the process toward industrialization, we end up with high mass consumption. Now, mass consumption means we are using up products and disposing of them. So when a person consumes food, of course, we're using all of the calories, we're using the nutrients of that food. For our bodies, we dispose of the stuff that is waste. Okay, that's what mass consumption means in economics. So if you have a whole bunch of things that you go through, napkins, paper towels, cleaner, all these kinds of things that you use up, you throw away the packaging, you start over again, this is consumption. So high mass consumption, according to modernization theory, is the key to higher economic levels and better human development index markers within nations. That's according to modernization theory. Another way of looking at things that perhaps the documentary that we are going to watch is you're going to see some elements of this. I don't know if you're going to see this. You're going to see this. Which one? You'll have to decide. You use your critical thinking skills and analyze that. But world systems theory, Emanuel Wallerstein is the name of the theorist who talks about world systems theory. And this tiny little circle over here, I should have drawn it much bigger than this, but you can see an image of it in the development chapter in our textbook. It's a three-circle graph here, where the outer circle is called the periphery, the middle circle is called the semi-periphery, and the very center is called the core. Core nations are the most economically advanced, the most industrialized, and the most independent of all nations in the world. There's a collection of core nations that Wallerstein talks about being at the center of international economic the drive toward economic independence. And that the core nations use the semi-periphery nations to bolster their position as economic movers and shakers. And the periphery nations usually don't involve very much economic or social uplift for the people who live there. Rather, the periphery nations on the very outside provide some of the raw materials that some companies harvest, the resources that could provide economic and social uplift to the people who live there. And instead, they simply reinforce the position as economic leaders, industrialized leaders by the core countries. And so when we watch this video, the documentary that I've mentioned several times, please look at all three of these. I didn't intentionally make you rule this one out. This is something that we look at. It's kind of an evolutionary model of you have to start here to get to here in terms of economic development. But please, when you're watching this last documentary that we're going to watch together, use your critical thinking skills and synthesize and evaluate those topics to see whether you think dependency theory, modernization theory, or world systems theory is best to analyze what you see happening in the international interaction by this corporation, the governments, and the people who work there. So work and live in these places. Okay, so text me with questions.